If you're watching this video, you're probably someone who's tried all the things you can related to self-help, psychology, how to better yourself. You've done the therapy. You've probably done some workshops or courses. You've tried every single angle that you can, and still the question remains, what do I do with my negative thoughts? How do I stop my negative thoughts? Is it possible that I can stop my negative thoughts or even change them in a way where I'm no longer suffering? So there's good news and bad news. Good news is that you're able to see deeper. You probably have deeper conversations with people. You think a lot about yourself. You think about concepts that most people don't. The bad news is that the more that you think, the more that you try to stop your negative thoughts, the worse your problems get. And I really do believe that negative thoughts are the cause of all human suffering. All negative thoughts are based in separation and concepts of separation. The emotion that's associated with all negative thoughts always roots back into fear. Because we live in a third dimensional or third density reality, meaning there's contrast, there's light and dark, there's black and white, there's good and bad in those ways. We live in a polarized reality. These negative thoughts are here to help us make sense of that polarized reality. So naturally we have positive thoughts and we're going to have negative thoughts. Something that most people aren't able to understand is that the negative thoughts that we have aren't our thoughts. They're the same negative thoughts that everybody has, just in the form that it takes within you. So while the context might be different, they're actually all the same negative thoughts, and they're all coming from the ego self. These thoughts are not special to you. These thoughts are not unique to you. These thoughts are human thoughts that we've adopted based on conditioning. And again, the context might be different. Thoughts themselves are part of being human. All negative thoughts are conditioned thoughts, meaning that they are not your actual thoughts. And what I mean by that is that imagine as a baby or a small child, a new baby or a young child does not naturally think negative. A human being only starts to think negatively after a certain period of time, usually around 5 years old and on as they get older. So what I mean by conditioned thoughts is that we are projected on by others, namely, we have our mom and our dad and also society, anything that we're receptive to as a child that's showing us who we are. Anything as a child that we're hearing, seeing, or being told that's helping us understand who we are from a place of behaving, doing, performing. So for example, if your parent is upset with you, like if dad's disappointed in you and dad tells you that, then you have to internalize the thought that's negative about yourself. Okay, there is no concept as a child to have an awareness that, hey, maybe dad had a bad day, and maybe dad's kind of hard on himself and he's hard on you. And so naturally that conditioned thought begins to appear in your thinking because you have no other choice as a child other than to accept what you're being told. So every human being has an ego, and egos are designed to be negative. Ego is the part of our thinking, our conditioned thinking. Ego is think of it like a software that we have in our minds. It's negatively oriented. And I don't mean it in a way that it's necessarily destructive, although it can be, but it's always going to be negatively oriented. And it goes back to that frame in the mind or the misperception that things are separate and that we have to experience fear or aversion. So what happens when people start to realize that their negative thoughts are actually causing their suffering? For most people, as we're growing up and we're moving into adulthood, we don't really recognize that our problems are actually coming from our thinking. So we think that they're coming from outside of us. We think that our problems that we see are actually our problems, but we don't understand it's coming from our thinking. And then once you do understand that, you start to want to say, oh, if I could just stop thinking this way, if I could stop having this perception, then I would be free of my problems. And so we actually turn our external need for control or influence, and we start putting it on our thinking. Or some of us just always have done that. We've always tried to quiet down the busy mind, quiet down the negative thinking. It doesn't really matter when you noticed it, but once you start to understand that it's your thinking, first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to a place where we're going to try to stop our thoughts. If I take a view of a negative thought as it's bad, it needs to stop, then I'm going to take a negative approach to the negative thought. If you approach something in a negative way, you're going to add more to the negativity. So this is why we would say, like, the more that you try to stop something, the more it keeps going. The more that you try to stop anything that you would view with hate or any type of negative approach or any type of negative view, it's just going to stay at least what it is, or it can even increase in negativity. And we see this in all kinds of life. When you're growing up, you probably had a parent yell at you to stop yelling. Or as a parent, you probably made that same mistake too. We know that we can't add something of what we don't want, which in this case is the negative thoughts about our negative thoughts, and expect them to stop. People tend to want to fix, human beings want to fix things. And if we try to fix our negative thoughts, we're just going to get frustrated and feel more defeated and feel at some point helpless that we're not able to stop our negative thoughts. And the reality is we can't stop negative thoughts because negative thoughts are part of being human. Only way to change a negative thought is to change our relationship with it. And when we view negative thoughts with a sense of mindfulness, with a sense of non-judgmental understanding, we actually depolarize that negative thought because we're no longer resisting it. And in a way, we're accepting it knowing that it's not actually us, so it can't harm us. As we begin to understand that when we approach our thinking from a place of mindfulness and from a place of non-judgmental observation, it can begin to change our relationship with those thoughts. And when we change our relationship with our thoughts, this is actually when things really begin to change inside of us. Because as we depolarize those thoughts, once they were negative and now they're just information, that information that we have can show us more about what we want. So as I'm having a negative thought and it affects my mood, I'm going to be able to say, I don't want to be in this kind of mood. And now my choices are, I can either try to stop what's going on outside of me, or I can start to understand my thinking. I can start to observe my thinking. I can start to be curious about where the thoughts are coming from, or if they're even true to begin with. And obviously people don't want to feel bad. Negative thoughts make us feel bad, and our desire is to not feel bad. It's to feel good or normal or okay or happy. And because of that, and our desire to be happy, feeling love, feeling joy, feeling calm, we can begin to look at our thoughts and contemplate what it is they are and where they're coming from. A lot of times we just ask ourselves simple questions such as, is this about me? Is this a big deal for me to worry about or think about or internalize? How am I serving myself by entertaining the reality of this thought? So much of the time, the negative thoughts are going to get us into a place of trying to stop the actual thought itself by trying to change our external environment, our relationship, the people that we're talking to, a circumstance. We're going to project, we're going to get angry, we're going to do all those things. And none of that's going to actually change the root of the negative thought or belief. And in many ways, what those negative thoughts are doing is they're showing us what we actually are and what we actually want. So if we want something that's not negative, but it's serving us, then we can't give energy to thoughts that are negative if we believe them to be true. So we have to ask ourselves those questions. Is it true? Is it about me? Is this what I want? Does this serve me? When we have negative thoughts and it begins to affect our mood, it causes suffering. It makes sense that it does those things because we are not negative beings. If you were a truly negative person, and obviously there are people like this, they're in a rare minority of people, you wouldn't be suffering from your negative thoughts. When we have thoughts that are based on guilt and shame and anger and other negative viewpoints of self, it does create suffering because at the base of who we are, there's a contrast there that's striking. And much like a guidance system or a GPS, we have an internal guidance system through our feelings that allows us to know when we're off course. So those negative thoughts, as they create internal suffering and negative emotions, now we have information that we're not on the right path or right course. And then we can begin to assert and go after the things that we truly want. If I give a negative thought my energy, it's the only way that it can sustain. I have to believe it to be true. I have to give it its life. It's not a creative force. Negative thoughts are like parasites. They feed off of your attention and energy so that they can sustain and take on more life, but only by us believing in them. So when we have thoughts inside of ourselves that we see projected onto us in society, things that are guilt-ridden and shameful, all of us believe in a narrative that gives that thought form life. And then it just resides in our minds. A good person does this, a bad person does this. Well, we've all done good and we've all done bad. And therefore, when I actually make a mistake or I see myself as true with my negative thought because I've been told that, now I have to believe in it. Bad people make mistakes even if they don't mean to. Everybody's lied. Everybody's cheated. Everybody's stolen. Everybody at one point hasn't been true to their word. But if you believe yourself to be bad because of your mistake, now you're giving that negative thought life, because the thought itself cannot be creative in nature. It depends on you to believe in it so that it can continue. And this is where self-acceptance and giving and receiving love and forgiveness of others and self begins to end this cycle of negative thinking that ends up in each one of our minds. So the gist of all of it is that we change the relationship to the negative thinking. We don't try to stop it. We don't try to fight it. We don't try to destroy it. And we don't try to get rid of it or try to fix it. What we do is we change our relationship with the negative thinking and understanding that it serves a purpose in us. We may not like that purpose, and that's fine, but we have to change that relationship with those negative thoughts that we have so that we can depolarize the energy. So we're no longer transferring our life-giving energy into the negative thoughts, believing them to be true. We notice them, we see them for what they are. No different than if you have a small child, your child's getting your attention by being disruptive, or they're making a lot of noise or creating commotion, right? They're starting to bother you so they can get your attention. If you don't get upset, we can just address the fact that the child doesn't know any better, and we can go on without reacting to it. But we're not trying to stop the child from being a child. We're just trying to guide and teach the child. And it's very much the same approach as we start to notice our negative thinking, so that we don't continue and keep adding to this cycle over and over again, adding negative energy, thereby creating more thoughts that ultimately just don't serve us. If you can change your relationship to your negative thinking, you will notice it will significantly change almost everything about your life and how you see life. And the practices aren't necessarily exciting or fun, but the reward is just so massive. And not only is it going to impact you in a positive way, it's going to impact you and your family and the people that you love and everything else. My name's John. I'm a coach, therapist for 15 years. I help people get past the stories in their minds, their stuck emotions, and into the life that they want. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.